Hello, everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of our new 32-part series, Joe Knows the 2021 NFL Draft Class. And I am so happy to be kicking this off with the Buffalo Bills, aka Buffalo Mafia. Just want to let you guys know I have a big place in my heart for you guys. I'm a big fan of the 1990s Bills, the Marv Levy Bills. They were such a good team. It was such an accomplishment to get to 4 Super Bowls in a row. And no, that's not a dig at all. I'm not trying to do like a wide right or something like that, some sort of joke. I don't break chops. I don't talk smack. So I just have just letting you know I really do have a lot of respect for the Buffalo Bills and what they were, back in the 1990s. What they achieved was really incredible with a lot of great players like Jim Kelly, Thurman Thomas, Cornelius Biscuit Bennett, and so many other great players, Darryl Talley, and don't forget Frank Reich, the current head coach of the Indianapolis Colts as well, and of course Bruce Smith. But I really appreciated those teams. I appreciate the NFL. I appreciate NFL history, and I really, really appreciated those Buffalo teams in the 1990s and what they achieved. So I'm really happy to be kicking it off and with the Bills. And of course, the title of this episode is Joe Knows the Buffalo Bills 2021 NFL Draft Class, and I'm really excited to talk about it. But before we get there, I got to take care of the portion of the show that actually makes me most nervous. I'm new at this. I'm new at doing this on my own, so bear with me a little bit. But I have to hit all the bells and whistles, and this part makes me feel like an old man because I always feel like I'm going to hit the wrong thing over here. So, where you can find the show: Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Podbean. I always say that wrong, so I'm going to overemphasize it. Podbean, Spotify, and Facebook. We have 2 Facebook pages. One is Toilets to Titles, and the other is When a Family Breaks. So hit that like and subscribe button and help us out. And when you can, over on Apple, if you can give us a 5-star review, that really helps us out a lot. And also, if you'd like to find out how to support the show, please visit us at patreon.com/toilets to titles, and that would be great. So anyway, I guess on to the draft talk of the show here. And I've reviewed the draft class for each team for 2021. I thought it was a great draft class. It was super deep. It was really, I thought it was more of an offensive heavy draft in terms of the top tier talent, but the defense also had, it wasn't necessarily the best top tier talent in this class in 2021, but it was very, very deep as well, especially when you got to like the end of the first round. And after that, that's when the defensive talent started matching up with the offensive talent in terms of what was available, and it was very, very deep. And that's why we were surprised to see a lot of good defensive players still sitting there at the end of the first round and the second round and the third round. It was really cool to see. So we're kicking this off with Gregory Rousseau, and I'm really psyched to talk about this guy because there are quite a few players that could theoretically and realistically speaking could be the steal of the draft. You've got Ojulari, who's drafted by my team, the Giants. You've got JOK. I forgot exactly who he was drafted by. Was it the Cardinals? Anyway, JOK was another one. You could even say Elijah Mitchell, who he went high in the second round for the Jets, but that guy easily could have been a first-round pick. But Greg Rousseau is interesting because I guess NCAA college player rankings as of say like October of 2020 or November of 2020, Rousseau was consistently the top 1 or 2 pass rushers that was in terms of ranking, like near the end of 2020. And as often happens, those rankings change over the next few months leading up to the draft, and Rousseau did drop. But he was someone who was, this is a guy who had 1 year of great production at Miami, University of Miami, but it was a lot of production. It was something like 15 and a half sacks in 2019. And like a lot of the other good players in 2020, he sat out last season. So there is no 2020 film on him. And I think that's a big reason why he actually dropped to the Bills at the end of the first round. But this is a guy who theoretically, when you look back in a few years, I don't think necessarily this year, he's got some growing to do in terms of understanding the game and filling out. He's already a big guy, but he still has more room to grow. So, but you have a lot to look forward to with this guy because he did have a lot of sacks 2 seasons ago, and his ceiling is very, very high. And where the Bills got this guy at number 30 at the back end of the first round, this is great value because I know, I'm not going to pretend that I know everything about the Bills. I know a lot of their big players. I know obviously they're a good team now, and I think they're going to be good for the foreseeable future. They've got their rookie quarterback. They've got a bunch of other really good players on both sides of the ball, and this draft class I think is going to really help solidify their spot as one of the top teams for the next 3 to 5 years because they attacked the trenches, which I think is important. And what I do know about the Bills is that they were at best mediocre, mid-pack in terms of being able to get to the quarterback last year in terms of sacks and pressures. And and Rousseau should help them out a lot with that. They got a guy with a lot of upside here. And to get him at 30th in the first round was great because, like I said, I really think this guy can wind up being the steal of the draft. Give him some time. Don't necessarily expect like great production this year, but he could really blossom into something special. And then moving on to the second pick, and if it seems like I'm going fast, these videos are only meant to be really no longer than 15 minutes. We can go over a little bit, but really not to be longer than 15 minutes. But anyway, second round pick. What did you do? I love what you did, Buffalo. I love what you did. You went with Carlos Basham, and out of Wake Forest defensive end. And this is a guy who actually complements some of the guys that you already have. First of all, Rousseau, and also Ed Oliver, who you drafted, what was it, 2 seasons ago, I believe. And you're putting together here a really nice draft class. I should say, really nice defensive line, young defensive line with a lot of potential here. And Carlos Basham is a guy who's like, he's more of a defensive end, and you can play him on the interior as well, but he's really more of a traditional, I think, 4-3 defensive end. Carlos Basham is a guy who you can actually play both on the outside and the inside. He also he's going to need some experience as well. But this is, for a second round pick, I thought this is really good value. And these are guys, both Rousseau and Basham. I don't think they necessarily fit every defensive scheme, but I think they're really good fits for Buffalo and what type of defense they have and what they're building. I think you struck gold with both of these picks, and I love that you doubled down on the defensive line here. Just build those trenches out. It's kind of what you need. You have your rookie, and not your rookie, but you have your young star quarterback. You have some really good and decent receivers as well. You have some running back talent there as well. I'd like to see a little more running back talent there, but you have a pretty decent running back core, especially the Singletary, who I am a big fan of. But you're building out the trenches, and that's such an important thing to do. It's not always sexy, but it's really important. And then moving on over here, Spencer Brown. Now, I like this pick too. You got this guy in the third round over here. Spencer Brown this was another, for the second year in a row, this was a draft class that was very deep, very talented on the offensive line. And I think most other draft classes, except for this one and last year's, they were both very deep. I think most other draft classes, Spencer Brown would have been a back end of the first round or early second round pick. He was an offensive tackle out of Northern Iowa. This guy is very good. And I think where they got him is actually perfect in the third round. But this is a guy who I think, like Rousseau, in a few years, not right now, he could wind up, stepping in and starting. They could also put him at guard. I don't know exactly. He's a big dude, and I think he could play in multiple positions at the line. And I don't know exactly what Buffalo's plans are for him, but I think you give him some time. I think this guy can blossom into a legitimate starting tackle. I'm not sure which side, left or right, but a legitimate NFL starting tackle. You can roll out there and not have to worry about. He might not be awesome, but he's someone you're not going to have to worry about when you roll him out there. I think he's going to be good when you just give him a little time. But I think his ceiling is also that he could wind up being where in a few years, we're looking back, maybe in like 2 or 3 years, we're looking back and we're like, hey, if we were redrafting, Spencer Brown actually could have went with the 30th pick in the first round by the Bills. He could have been a back end first round pick there. And I think he could be that good. I think this guy is like a sleeper pick. He kind of reminds me of Orlando Brown. I think it was Orlando Brown of the Baltimore Ravens, who was drafted in the third round by the Ravens a few seasons ago, developed into being a top end tackle on both sides of the ball. And I believe he was just traded to, was it the Rams, I think, this year? I forgot. He was traded to another team by the Ravens for a first round pick and maybe some other picks as well. But Orlando Brown was a guy that, so I think like Spencer Brown, the other teams slept on. They kind of look at like the pro day stats, and they were like, maybe a little slow at this and the 40-yard dash, and maybe a little slow at the at the the shuttle run or something like that, and instead of really like focusing more on how the guy played, looking at the game tape. And Spencer Brown, when you look at his game tape, is pretty damn impressive. And he's gone up against good talent, good, high-end NCAA talent, and he's performed well. There were some guys that got the best of him. I forgot exactly who, but he also performed well against some other top edge rushers who went this year's draft. And I think Ojulari actually may have been one of them either this year or last year. And I think he actually played pretty well against him. So got a lot of talent there. And like I said, he reminds me of Orlando Brown, and it's not just the name. It's not Orlando Brown and Spencer Brown. Could be a coincidence. I think it is. But that's who he kind of reminds me of in terms of possibly being a surprise, like 2 or 3 years from now, in terms of in looking back, and he could be could have been first round talent. And what are you doing over here, Buffalo Bills? We're keeping with the theme here of strengthening those trenches, and I love what you did here too. You went with Tommy Doyle, offensive tackle out of Miami of Ohio, and I really wish they would change the name of that school. I think it's ridiculous. There's one Miami. It's in Florida. There should be no Miami of Ohio. I apologize for anyone who lives there, but I find that to be annoying personally. So anyway, Doyle, offensive tackle out of Miami of Ohio. Another sleeper pick here. Again, if this class had not been as deep as it was, I think this is a guy who actually probably would have been more of like a back end second round pick. Another versatile player here, tackle, guard. He might not wind up being a starter, but he could be. But I think he's going to be more like versatile depth, to be honest with you, but which is so darn important, especially young depth, because people are always getting injured. Obviously, you've got 5 guys on the line. At any point, one of these 5 guys can get injured. They're a bunch of dancing elephants, and these guys get injured as well. So they're banging in the trenches, and they get hurt. So Tommy Doyle, I think he's a potential starter, either as a tackle or a guard down the road. But if not, I think he's going to give you good quality depth for at least the next few years. And I think it was a really good pick. And I love this theme here with the going with the trenches. Good for you, Buffalo. Good for you. And now you kind of have the sexy pick, Marquez Stevenson. And now the 2021 draft class was very deep in wide receiver, just like last year. It might have even been deeper this year too, actually. In Marquez Stevenson, I forgot exactly what round you got him, and I think you might have got him in the 5th round. And I had the picks up here on another screen, and I messed it up in terms of what round they were taken. So right now I'm just going blind over here, but I know he was kind of like a 5th round pick. In Marquez Stevenson, I think he actually could have been a 4th round pick in most other draft classes that aren't so super deep in wide receiver. This guy could have been a back end 2nd round pick, early 3rd round pick. Marquez Stevenson has a lot of talent. I don't think this is a guy who would ever develop into a number 1, which it doesn't look like he need anyway because he got Stephon Diggs. But hey, don't get me wrong. It's nice to be rich in wide receiver. So it would be nice to have another legit number 1 wide receiver. I don't think that's I'm not going to play him up to be that way, like that's his ceiling. I don't think that's what it is. But I think he could be kind of like a Darius Slayton, a guy who can play on the outside, where he's not going to be a true number 1, but a guy who can take the top off the defense. He has a history of injury. I think that's why he fell to like the 4th, 5th round. And he's got a history of injury, and he also has a little case of the dropsies too. So, that's going to hinder him from really reaching his total ceiling that he could possibly reach. But this is really good value. This is good talent that you got here, guys. And like I said, it's a sexy position. I don't think he's going to be a number 1, but this is a guy who I think, if not this year, next year is going to bring you a lot of talent. It's going to bring you a lot of talent. Going to really help you out in the wide receiver core. And you already have Diggs. You got Cole Beasley, who I love. I'm a Giants fan. I'm so glad he's not on the Cowboys anymore. Beasley was always just a pain in the rear end. But you get Marquez Stevenson, who can possibly take the top off the defense. He's got a lot of potential. And when you're drafting a guy that late, later, and I should say past the 3rd round, that's all you can ask for is just a guy who can come in here, give you some production, but also has a pretty good ceiling. And I think he's got a good ceiling as a good number 2 pick. As a good number 2 wide receiver, in a few years. Now down here, Damar Hamlin. This is a guy I actually know a little bit about. I like him a lot. I was reading up a lot about him for like the 4 months leading up to the draft. I'm a maniac. My Giants have had bad records for a long time. So as soon as December ends, or even before that, I start reading up on all the college players that I possibly can. And I had my eye on this guy. Now, Damar Hamlin, he's not a top end cornerback, and he's not a top end safety. He was actually rated pretty high as a cornerback. I think he might have been like 13th cornerback overall. I think maybe by ESPN, if I recall, and which is a good ranking. Nationally, it was like the 13th in the entire NCAA draft this year, and he was a pretty good cornerback. But he's also safety, and to me, that's what I love is this versatility because more and more defenses are focusing on developing their secondary as they should, because obviously we're becoming more and more of a pass heavy league over here. So the NFL defenses are adapting by really bringing a lot of versatility to their defense, and like my Giants are doing that. And I'm not always trying to tout my team; they haven't been very good. But when I try to pick like a comparison, it's the easiest thing for me to do. So I'm not trying to promote my team. But anyway, so you've got a guy here in Hamlin who can play cornerback and safety, and it's important because again, you get a lot of injuries. You've got a lot of nickel packages and dime packages that are rolled out there. You see a lot of three cornerback and three safety looks out there. And so if this guy can, even if he doesn't wind up being a starter, I think he can wind up being a starter um, at either position. And even if he doesn't, he's going to bring, I think, I have no doubt he's going to bring a lot of good, versatile depth to the secondary, and which they can use. I know they need a little help in the secondary over there. And then you've got Richard Wildgoose, the next to last pick. And this is a guy I really don't know much about, but there was one of the team members here at Toilets to Titles. I think it might have been Coach Chefs, who was constantly talking about Rashad Wildgoose. And so I'm just going to go with what he was saying about him, how he felt about him. And he was constantly touting him. I think it was Coach. If not, it was someone else. But someone here at Toilets to Titles was constantly talking of Wildgoose. And I think he got, again, more depth here in the secondary. A guy, from my understanding at least, has pretty good high ceiling. He's cornerback from Wisconsin. I like Wisconsin players. I think they tend to translate well to the NFL. And I think you got yourself a good guy here, late in the draft. And you guys, there's a theme here. Not just did you attack the trenches, but you're also brought in secondary help. And I love that too, because like I just said before with Damar Hamlin, it's a pass heavy league. That means you need, besides being able to get to the quarterback with a pass rush, you need guys who can cover in the secondary. And that of course helps your your edge rushers and your defensive ends. It helps turn those pressures into sacks. And I think Wild Goose has a good chance if he doesn't wind up being a starter, again, good depth. It's really good value at this point. And then the last pick we got down here for you guys, Jack Anderson, guard out of Texas Tech. Look at this. Bills Mafia, what did you do? You're attacking the trenches. You took two defensive ends and you took three offensive linemen. I love it. This was a good draft class for the offensive line. I wouldn't say it was as top heavy as last year, but it was, again, kind of like the defensive side of the ball. It wasn't as top heavy, but a lot of good depth. And you got Jack Anderson, guard out of Texas Tech. And again, so that's some good value there. I really like what you did because you have a lot of good star players, at key positions, especially quarterback. And you also have Stephon Diggs at wide receiver, and you have some, really good secondary players already. But you really needed to strengthen your lines, and you went out and you did it, and you got good value when you did it. So you guys should be really proud of what your GM Bean achieved here. He did really, really well. So I'm going to wrap it up here. I just want to put this down here with show the rest of the team members Twitter names over here, and you can catch us at Toilets to Titles on Twitter, and on Twitter you can catch me at JoJ_Clark. And I think that's it, guys. This is my first episode. I hope it was okay. Thanks for rolling with me. I'm not so much nervous. I'm just just getting used to things over here. I'm a bit of a dinosaur, so it's all kind of new to me. But it was a great time. I had a great time doing this on the Buffalo Bills. I hope you all enjoyed it. And next up is going to be the Miami Dolphins. Benvenido a Miami. Take care, guys. Have a good